My name is Sharone Mitchell Jr. I work as the Cook County Public Defender. I think obviously pretrial reform is certainly on the tips of a lot of folks' tongues here locally. In Illinois, we passed the Pretrial Fairness Act, which ends the use of money as a deciding factor in pretrial decision making. So the implementation of that law is obviously incredibly important. But I think there are other issues more globally. I'm biased, but thinking about how we support public defense across the state is really important. Everybody has a right to counsel, and we know that the right to counsel, really struggles in places both across the state and in the country. And I think the idea of reentry is also very important when somebody gets caught up in the legal system, and we know that the numbers are rising, historically. A person should be able to pay their debt to society and be able to provide for their families, provide for themselves. And too often, our system is littered with permanent punishments that disallow a person from being able to return home and provide. So, I think about pretrial. I think about access to public defenders and reentry policy for those returning to the system as the most pressing needs, most pressing issues for the criminal legal system. It's May 13th right now. We are in prime gardening season here in Chicago. I'm a huge gardener. Start from seed in my basement in January. Luckily, my wife does not divorce me. I've stolen a ton of real estate from her home gym in our basement, and I grow my little seedlings and get them outside right around now. So my attention certainly is kind of challenged. I'm certainly thinking about our office and thinking about the things we can do to provide the best legal resources for the folks we are so blessed to represent. I think for me, as a young defender, as a kind of a line public defender, one of the I think most important moments is, I was at this, I was working at this courthouse, this misdemeanor courthouse, we called it Branch 34. It was where we would have, 60, 70, 100 cases a day on the call, all misdemeanor cases. The courtroom was a pretty huge courtroom. It was bustling with police officers and accused people, community members, court personnel, and every day it was incredibly busy. Except for these 3 days. It was during a big protest, and the court system and the police department decided that they just weren't going to arrest as many people on misdemeanors that day and kind of redistribute their resources to the protests downtown. So for my entire life there at Branch 34, I was running around like a chicken with their head cut off from 8 o'clock to 3:30, and then for these 3 days, or it might have been 2 days, the courtroom was completely empty. And I realized that, well, all these people that were here, the problems of the society didn't end for those 2 days. It's just how we approach those issues changed, how we use the criminal legal system changed. And it really made me realize that, well, first change is possible, but also there are different approaches. We can kind of agree that there's an issue, but there are different ways that we can approach that. So that's really kind of what got me started moving away from just thinking about at least just individual representation to really policy and thinking about how we can make the system better. And I think certainly in my career, one of the biggest things I've been a part of is the end of cash bond. As a line defender, the biggest question, the hardest thing for me to do was to talk to a grandmother or a sister or a church family member about whether they would, pay their rent or pay their mortgage or pay this key light bill or take that money and bond their loved one out. It was a horrible, horrible thing that we had to do, and I'm so glad that we've decided. as a state, that we were no longer going to use money as a deciding factor whether somebody remains in jail or out, that we were going to empower judges to make decisions based upon risk, not a guess of what's in somebody's pocketbook or what's in a family member's pocketbook. So that's certainly been one of the things I've been most proud of being a part of in both the passage of the law, but more importantly, the implementation of the law, right? Because laws are just words on paper, but if you don't have folks motivated to ensure that those words on paper, gets to practice and actually helps people, whether we're talking about community members or accused people or people who have been victims of violence or harm, it's not worth the paper it's printed on. So I'm really excited I've got an opportunity to work on that. And really excited that I got the opportunity to see the changes possible as a young defender.